Hello and welcome to Recyclist. I'm your host, Eric Provost, and I have the distinct honor of being joined today by a very special guest. Everyone, please help me welcome to the show right now the Executive Director of the American Biogas Council, Mr. Patrick Serfass. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Hey, you as well, sir. Once again, thank you so much for being here. And for those who may not be familiar with the American Biogas Council, what is it? What function does your organization play within the space?
Well, as a trade association, we're the only organization that represents the entire biogas industry in the US. And what that means is that we really care about building biogas systems in the US. And the reason why we care about that is because there are literally millions of tons of organic waste that are not getting recycled in the US. We believe biogas systems are one of the best ways to recycle that material. And so if we build more biogas systems where we're going to recycle more organic waste, produce more renewable energy, produce more natural fertilizer, and we think that's a really important thing for us to do. So we've got about 400 companies and about 6,000 people that are members, all working to do as much of that as possible in the United States.
Yeah, it's a lot of members. I feel like the council itself has grown quite considerably over the past several years. Obviously, as biogas and this idea of renewable natural gas has continued to gain momentum in the public and legislative zeitgeist. I feel like you guys have grown significantly since then.
We really have. I think we started about 15 years ago with about 20 companies that asked me to create an organization to represent the industry because there wasn't any organization. And so we did that, and 20 members to about 400 now. Our big conference, Biogas Americas, attracts over 2,000 people every year in the spring, and it's been great. And the interesting thing is that the what biogas does, the microbes that create the biogas in our biogas systems are the oldest living organisms in the entire universe. This concept of what nature naturally does has been around since the beginning of time. And but the industry and the oldest biogas systems are about 100 years old. But it, like you said, it's only been in the last, about 10 to 15 years that people have really more collectively started to understand what biogas systems really do and why they are important. And I think that's because dealing with our waste is really important. People care more and more and more about that, which is important. We need to recycle as much of our wasted material as possible and try to not use it as waste. And we need more renewable energy. And when you can do both of those things at the same time and some other benefits, it just makes sense. And so it's kind of been catching on and catching on and catching on, and that's a beautiful thing for us.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's not just growing in the public zeitgeist, as I glossed over a few seconds ago. It's also growing within the legislative zeitgeist. So, one of the big things that you guys do at the American Biogas Council is you monitor state and even federal legislation as the industry, biogas, waste, and renewable natural gas start to become more of a regulated space. So, you guys keep a close watch on that, correct?
We do, and the reason is, if you look at any industry, and then if we even just look at energy industries to try to narrow it down a little bit, if you look at coal, oil, and gas, where we started with the Industrial Revolution, or you look at wind, hydro, solar, and other renewable energy sectors besides biogas, all of those industries without policy would have grown on their own. But it's no secret that the industries grow a lot faster with favorable policy put in place. And so, if there are industries that you really want to grow, then policy is one of the tools to help accelerate that. And we are obviously think it's really important to make sure that the policy, the energy policy, in particular in the US, the recycling policy, and even to some extent, our policy around soil health and utilization of fertilizers. We think that policy has room for improvement. And if we do that, our society will be able to benefit a lot from the renewable energy systems and recycling systems that we can build. So that's really important to us.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'd love to speak with you specifically about one big piece of legislation that recently got passed. I think it would be fair to say that as of this recording, the current administration Well, renewables isn't one of the biggest trends on their agenda. So I think a lot of people may have been surprised to see the American Biogas Council and you specifically release a statement praising the passage of H.R. 1, very famously known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I'm just very quickly going to quote a section of your statement. You say, quote, the act contains several helpful provisions for the biogas sector, acknowledging the enormous potential of recycling decomposable waste. And you go on to say, we are particularly encouraged by provisions that ensure American producers using U.S. and North American feedstocks can compete on a level playing field while also maintaining appropriate values for manure based biogas. So, again, I think it might have surprised a few people to see a bill like this actually contain beneficial provisions for the renewable sector, given the administration it came from. But I just want to use that as a launching off point. Should this sector be encouraged by the passage of this bill, and why should they or not?
Yeah, I think we should. And I think one important centering note is that biogas as a technology or as an industry is really nonpartisan. And if you are on the liberal side of the political spectrum, you might look at biogas systems as recycling, reducing greenhouse gases, contributing to clean water and clean air and healthier soils. And if you're on the more conservative side of the political spectrum, you might look at biogas systems as supporting rural America and supporting jobs and building local economies, because all the biogas systems are really local systems impacting their local area and domestic energy. And the interesting thing with the One Big Beautiful Bill, it's clearly passed by a Republican majority House and Senate and White House, is that there are a lot of the things that biogas systems can do that support the Republican agenda. And fortunately, the Republican leaders in Congress and in the White House recognized those benefits and said, hey, well, this helps my agenda, so let's push this forward. I think it would be true, and it has been true in the case when the Democrats were in power, that there's something for society to benefit from there. And so, in a way, it's just kind of the way that it should be. Whoever's in power should be able to find benefits in what the biogas industry provides. And what we saw in the One Big Beautiful Bill was Republicans recognizing some of those benefits and supporting them. And so, specifically in the One Big Beautiful Bill, one of the things that really supported the biogas industry was extension of at least one of the particular tax credits that encourages the production of domestic fuel. We are a domestic industry. Biogas systems happen all around the world, but very rarely, although this might change in future years, very rarely does the gas get utilized outside of a country. Everything gets processed locally and used locally, and so that is all domestic energy. And so Republicans have a lot to celebrate in encouraging an industry like the biogas industry that produces domestic energy and that reduces waste. And that's what got supported in the extension of a tax credit. It's called 45V for clean fuel production. Interestingly, a tax credit that was created and extended under Democratic leadership has now been extended under Republican leadership. So that's good to see. Clean fuel should be nonpartisan. We need it no matter where you are in the political spectrum. And that tax credit got extended. And then a provision called transferability, which allows smaller companies that may not have a lot of tax liability to still be able to use a tax credit, or like government entities that don't pay taxes, they can still use the tax credit to get more new systems built. And those are all beneficial things.
Yeah, and obviously that isn't the only provision. Hopefully, helping the biogas sector, not just for the companies producing this fuel and able to create those tax credits. You do also say, like I mentioned, you're particularly encouraged by provisions that ensure American producers using U.S. and North American feedstocks can compete on a level playing field. What specifically does that mean?
Well, there's kind of three main categories of waste that usually go into a biogas system.
Hmm.
There's food waste. So think about everything from the food scraps that we throw off our kitchen tables to food scraps that come from a restaurant to the waste that comes from processing food. Whether you're in a fish processing facility or canning fruit, all of these food processors have waste. So food waste, one category. Second, wastewater sludge. So everything that we flush down our toilets and sinks and goes into our sewers has a lot of water in it. We got to clean up that water and put it back into our waterways. And so all the sludge that you pull out of sewage has to be done with that. Well, one of the things you can do is recycle it and make biogas and then put clean, nutrient rich fertilizer back on our land. So wastewater sludge is a second category. And a third category is agriculture and agricultural waste. And normally that means manure from our livestock animals, but it also means the waste from processing those animals, or also the waste from growing crops, the waste that can't be used in other ways. And so, one of the things, there was an earlier stage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which allowed some of those feedstocks to be used and provided a disincentive for other feedstocks. And by the time the bill was actually passed, they were treated more equally, the way that they should have been. And so that statement was praising Congress's correction on recognizing that all of these feedstocks should be able to be recycled and turned into renewable fuel and renewable fertilizer.
Absolutely. And what would be kind of your recommendation to organizations, to renewable fuel manufacturers, to, the people that collect these feedstocks and produce the gas themselves? How could they best take advantage of the provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, it's they're taking advantage of the tax credit, and the tax credit can only be used if you're building a new system. So if you're
Hmm.
building a new system, then you are eligible for a reduction in your tax liability. And so the way that you use the provisions is to build more biogas systems, and that's obviously something that we think is really important to be able to handle our society's organic waste.
Does the One Big Beautiful Bill specifically touch on other aspects, specifically landfills, wastewater treatment plants at large, or is it kind of focused on the feedstocks area and the tax credit areas?
Well, the provision that I was speaking about before,
Hmm.
45Z, not 45V. I think I might have misspoken earlier. 45Z is all about fuel production. And so it matters less if you're, as long as it's fuel production from a biogas system, it matters less what your feedstock is and just that you're producing that fuel. And if you're producing that fuel for use, then very simplistically that qualifies you for the tax credit. So yeah, if you are a landfill biogas system, a farm-based biogas system, a food waste biogas system, or a wastewater biogas system, those are all eligible.
Awesome. And did the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill, did it make you hopeful for future legislation? Do you think that this is a good step in the right direction for a lot of uh, I think we should say maybe the renewables again hasn't been a huge priority, but do you think this may start to kind of reverse that trend a little bit? Do you think you might see more partisan support for this sector and for other types of energies within this space?
Well, I think we're just always looking for support, whoever's in power. And as I mentioned
Of course,
earlier, we feel like there should be support whether you're a liberal or a conservative, because
absolutely.
there's something for everyone to win from out of this. The interesting thing with renewable energy as a word is that it kind of has been labeled as a bad word by some conservatives and kind of understood as being like this liberal idea, but it's really not. I mean, almost all renewable energy is produced domestically. It's all domestic energy. So, I think that's what we've seen with today's Republican leaders recognizing is that well, we if we call it something different, maybe it's more politically palatable. If we call it domestic energy, then it's easier to support. And so, yeah, I would expect that we're going to see more support of biogas systems, no matter who is leading our policymakers in Congress and the White House, or even in state legislatures, because there's some wherever you are in society, urban, rural, there's something for you to be able to benefit from, because we're taking a wasted product and turning it into something that is useful and sellable, and that should be something that everyone's supportive of.
Do you think that that's why it's so important for organizations like the American Biogas Council to be so active in this legislative process to make sure people have the correct information and to keep it really from being politicized or geared too much one way to the left or to the right, and make sure people know what's actually going on within this industry?
Oh, absolutely. Well, here's the funny secret about like lobbying and trying to advocate your policymakers. I mean, probably 90+% of advocacy
Hmm.
is just education. At least in our case, that's definitely true. We actually did a national poll just in April, just a couple months ago, and we polled all Americans, just like a New York Times Siena poll that is trying to figure out who's going to win the election and what voters are thinking, like same kind of national scope poll. And it found that 36 percent of people were favorable to biogas if they didn't know what biogas was. And that was really low. But then we took those same people, and the pollsters would tell them what biogas systems did, that they took organic material and recycled it into fuel for homes and vehicles and natural fertilizer. Didn't even say it was good, just said, this is what a biogas system does. How favorable are you to biogas now? And it was 87% favorable. And that makes a ton of sense, because who doesn't want to turn waste into a valuable product? Who doesn't want to make renewable energy domestically? Who doesn't want more soil health for growing our food and crops? And so that 87% approval rating, which translated to 3 out of 4 voters supporting government support for the biogas industry, I think that really means that you're going to have policymakers supporting the industry if they just know what it is. So most of what we do for advocacy for our policymakers is just tell folks what it is. And while we have 2,500 biogas systems operating in the US, and they're in all 50 states, my guess is at least half of the people, even listening to this podcast,
Hmm.
might not know that there's a biogas system operating near them. And so a big part of it just starts with education. Like, did you know that there's a biogas system near you, recycling organic waste into renewable energy? And here's what it would take to do more of that. We've probably, if you look at the entire industry in the US, we have only built about 10 to 15% of all the facilities that could be built to handle all the organic waste that we produce. And that translates down to a local or state level pretty consistently. Some states have more biogas systems than others, but generally in every state there's about a 10 to 15% penetration. And so that tracks with, like, probably most people don't know what it is. And so that means in order to get more policy support for the industry, we just start with education. And hey, do you know what this is? Do you know how it can help? And education is the name of the game.
Well, with a 10 to 15%, inception rate for something like this, I think I'm honestly one of the strongest arguments, especially for policymakers and for local and state and even the federal government, would just be that is millions and millions of revenue, potential revenue that's just being left on the table at this point with such a low inception rate across the country. And I've got to imagine that that typically is one of the biggest questions when you speak to people and try to educate them on biogas. I've got to imagine money comes up pretty quickly. Are you ever surprised, or are people ever surprised when you kind of lay out the potential for this industry in front of them when it comes to a revenue standpoint?
Well, you mentioned millions, but I'm gonna take you up in order of magnitude. If we build
Oh,
out all
okay.
of those biogas systems, that would catalyze almost $500 billion in capital deployment.
Really, almost
So 400,
$500 billion.
yeah, $450 billion in just the capital cost for building new systems, and that's all. It's all local. So here's what happens with organic waste. So organic, you look at food waste, wastewater sludge, and agricultural waste, right? And then we've got landfill biogas systems also. and they're going to be a mix of all of those things, right? All of those wastes are wet, and wet is heavy, and heavy is expensive to move. So what you try to do is you build the biogas systems right where the waste is. That means that the capital deployment to build biogas systems happens locally where the waste is. And then what you're producing is a natural fertilizer. Well, that ends up being usually heavy unless you dry it, which takes energy. It's normally stays heavy, so you're going to want to use that natural fertilizer locally. And then gas and electricity as your renewable energy, you can choose what you're making. It's a little bit easier to distribute that, but generally the gas or the electricity is still going to end up being used locally in most instances. So yeah, that's $450 billion of local investment in the U.S. if we build out that other 90 to 85% of the industry, and tons of jobs, tons of improvement to the environment that comes along with that. So, as there's a lot to love there, and we hope other people will see that too.
I do think the jobs is a very good point to bring up because that is, no matter what era of American history you're talking about, jobs has always been a big talking point just because employment has always been, I mean, we have 300 plus million people in this country, and jobs even now are coming at a premium. So I do think jobs is a very salient point for many people on both sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, I think most of us want to be employed or at least be making enough money to put food on the table, right? So yeah, jobs are super important. In the biogas space, there's two kinds of jobs. There's the construction jobs to build the system, which are a lot more numerous, and then there are the permanent jobs for the people that need to operate these systems. The biogas systems are like you think of a large tank. You're putting this material into a large tank, and you've got that Goldilocks mix of not too hot, not too cold, mixed not too much, not too little. And when you do that and you basically keep it at body temperature, like a stomach, the microbes that are already present in the material that you put in, the sludge, the food waste, the microbes that are already there reproduce and they eat up the organic material and they burp out biogas. And so the operators, the job operators for these systems are basically keeping that stomach happy. You don't want to put in, just like our own stomachs, you don't want to put in too much of any one food. And so there's a recipe that goes into the biogas systems. And that's what the operators are doing. They're making sure that it stays Goldilocks balance. They're making sure the recipe going into the system is good. So we count, if you build out the biogas system, these additional it ends up being an additional 17,000 projects. That equates to about 900,000 construction jobs, so just short of a million construction jobs, and about 45,000 permanent jobs in places all across the U.S., rural and urban.
Yeah, and this is in an industry that is still on the rise and still continuing to grow. So I'm sure even those numbers will be larger in even just the next couple years. But would you? I mean, go ahead and say it if it's true. I mean, can we credit your advocacy with the passing of the one big beautiful bill at this point?
Oh gosh, I don't. This is such a huge bill. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would take credit for that. Yeah, there's so many people working on it. It's just an absolutely massive bill. But yeah, our organization was certainly a big part, and some of the senators, as the Senate was making some corrections to the House version, some of our senators, like Senator Grassley, were really helpful in making some of those corrections and getting things passed. So yeah, a lot of advocacy for it, but as I mentioned earlier, that advocacy was almost entirely just education. Like, hey, if you make this correction, here's how it's going to impact your district or your state. Or if you support the biogas industry, here's how society is going to benefit from that. If you think that these are beneficial things, then let's put this stuff in the legislation and let's make lives a little bit better. I think on the jobs front, one of the interesting attributes of this industry that helps make it easy to support is that we like to say the technology, which is really just what nature is doing. Like biogas technology is what nature has done since the beginning of time to
Yeah,
just
anaerobic
eat up.
digestion. Yeah,
Yeah, and all we're doing is helping to make nature work at a larger scale and efficiently. That's all these systems are doing. And so the skill that's needed jobs wise to run a biogas system, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. These things are not incredibly technical. They are complex because there's a lot of moving parts and you need to keep this living system alive and thriving. But we're talking about $100 to $2,000 salaries for people with, maybe just a high school diploma. And so having those kinds of well-paid jobs in rural and urban America, but a lot of them are going to be in rural because that's where a lot of the waste is a really, really beneficial thing and another thing to support.
Absolutely. And I know for some people it may seem like it, but the government is rarely doing one thing at a time. And I know the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is not the only piece of legislation on your guys' docket for this year. Are there any other bills, any other, laws, any other legislation going on that you guys are keeping watch on? Anything recently passed people should be aware of? What should people in this space be looking at right now, from your opinion?
Well, actually, a lot of our high priorities right now relate to implementation of the One Big Beautiful Bill. There's some actions that Treasury and EPA and USDA all need to take related to implementation of this bill, and so that continues to be a high priority. And in addition to that, EPA is also going through setting the targets for a program called the Renewable Fuel Standard, which exists to encourage the production of renewable fuels for transportation in the US. And so that's a really high priority, making sure that those new targets for the next 3 years are set at a level that will encourage growth of the renewable fuels industries while not placing too much of a burden on anyone else. And then another category of policies which are more state level are clean fuel policies. So these are also transportation related for the most part, and these clean fuel standards basically exist to encourage local projects that produce renewable fuels to decarbonize transportation. And so that could be the production of ethanol to go into gasoline vehicles, or renewable diesel or bio-based diesel to replace fossil-based diesel, or in our case with biogas, it's either going to be producing biogas to renewable natural gas for natural gas vehicles, or it's going to be biogas to electricity to electric vehicles. And there's a program in California called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, which is one of these clean fuel standards. It's the most popular, it's the biggest, it was the first one to be developed. And it has been an incredibly successful program in terms of decarbonizing the transportation sector and building lots of different kinds of renewable fuel projects in and around California, feeding into that market. And now we've got programs that exist in Oregon and Washington and New Mexico. And so a big priority for the American Biogas Council right now is helping those programs to also flourish, like the ones in California, for a variety of different kinds of renewable fuels. And then there's about 9 states or so beyond them that are considering, because of the success of California and these other states, are considering building their own clean fuel standard in their states to also encourage that local um, economic growth and decarbonization of the transportation sector. And so there's a lot of different things that we're looking at right now. I would say those are kind of top of the heap right now for our policies efforts. And then there's a bunch of things that we're doing beyond that that relate to trying to decarbonize shipping fuel in the maritime sector. So there's some big things happening internationally that are going to impact the US market. And there's some really interesting things happening with carbon dioxide. The use of carbon dioxide for our food and beverages, or processing of animals and making food, and even dry ice for industrial cleaning and things like that. Why not use biogenic carbon dioxide rather than using natural gas to create carbon dioxide? And there's a lot of new markets that could open up related to those areas that we're trying to encourage as well.
Yeah, I know specifically when it comes to clean fuel tax credits, those are becoming incredibly lucrative, very popular programs around the country. Here at Recyclist, we cover stories, I feel like every week, where, companies like Republic Services and, uh, Clean Fuel Corps are selling their tax credits for literally tens of millions of dollars at a time. So, I mean, that sounds like a pretty big incentive to me.
It is. They're big incentives. I think it's important to also note that usually there's huge costs that come along
That's
with those
fair.
as well. I mean, a lot
That's
of these
fair.
systems are not inexpensive, and like many things, you often get better efficiencies, better economies of scale when you build bigger systems, and that means bigger capital costs. And so it's yeah, the bigger tax breaks are often coming with bigger spending, which is good. Like that's why these as policy tools often get passed is because okay, we can give tax breaks here, but the tax breaks are going to also incentivize local investment. So yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I think there are a lot more tax credits that have not been supportive. Even in the one big beautiful bill, there were like the 45 V tax credit for clean hydrogen and some of the electricity related tax credits. Those were not supported as much. They were supported under the last administration with the Democrats in power and not the Republicans. So there's a lot of room for improvement
And that
in
was under the
terms of
45Z, the 45Z credit.
yeah, so 45V on hydrogen. This is why I stumbled up. 45V as in Victor is for hydrogen, and 45Z Zulu is for clean fuels. 45Z was
See, that's why
passed
we
and
brought you
extended.
on to help us
Well, I
explain
mean,
this.
even I need help, right? But yeah, 45Z was extended by the one big beautiful bill. 45V for hydrogen was not, and so there's a lot of effort now because those programs could also be very beneficial. They are just not politically supported as well by our current political leaders, and a lot of us feel like that should change because if you look at the actual facts and how much these industries can support Americans, there's a lot of benefits there that are left that we're not utilizing right now, and so room for improvement, and therefore priorities for the next Congress or future efforts for this current Congress.
Yeah. And with all the advocacy and all the education you're doing, do you feel confident? Do you feel hopeful for the future of biogas legislation?
Oh, no question. And it's just because everyone has something to win from with biogas. It's whether you care about recycling or you care about energy, you care about agriculture, or you care about recycling urban food waste. I mean, you're urban, rural, big, small. Everyone wants to make sure that they're not wasting. I know that when I see my kids throw food in the trash, I'm seeing dollar signs going into the trash. And at a societal level, that's just happening at a bigger scale. And it's something that we can improve upon. I think we should.
Yeah. Well, that 80%, 86% approval rating from the educated masses on biogas is surely going to lead to some more people themselves wanting to advocate. So, if there are other people out there wanting to advocate biogas in their own community, how would you recommend they start to go about that?
Well, we'd love for you to come to the American Biogas Council, americanbiogascouncil.org. There's a lot of information there to help you understand what biogas systems do. Education is the first step, and then if you want to take action and work with us, there's some opportunities to work with us and do that. So yeah, come to the American Biogas Council and let us help you, or come to some of our great events like Biogas Americas or the Business of Biogas, and we'd love to see you in person as well.
Yeah, and once again, that's americanbiogascouncil.org.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, I won't take up any more of your time, but I do want to thank you one more time for joining us today on Recyclist and helping us make sense of this bill and the potential legislative future of this incredible industry.
Thanks, Eric.
Awesome. And for everybody listening right now, make sure to check out again AmericanBiogasCouncil.org. See everything that they're doing, all the amazing advocacy and the changes that they are bringing, the positive changes they are bringing to the biogas and renewable natural gas landscape. And after that, do make sure to check out the sponsor of Recyclist, Diamond Scientific, an industry leader in gas analysis, instrumentation, and solutions. Make sure to check them out online at diamondsci.com. That's diamondsci.com, or you can even set up a personalized presentation just by calling 321 223 7500. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Recyclist. I'm your host, Eric Provost, and we will see you next time. Thank you.